Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Azure Functions webcast. We are so official and legit now. We had like a hold thing while we got the stream going, so we didn't have the weird pause where we have to go. And I see chat messages coming in, which is good. I see Wagner, who did dial in at 5:30 in the morning, or at least you set your alarm for 5:30 in the morning, Wagner, to join us for our webcast. It'd be great to know who all is here too. Tiago as well. He was active on Twitter today, helping me know about some Redis stuff. So we will jump right into it. Thank you everyone for joining our remote Azure Functions webcast with our team. And we have two new faces, not new to the team, but new to the webcast. You might have seen them in Ignite or PyCon or whatever else before. So maybe I'll let you both introduce yourself. Sonia, you want to do a quick intro?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Jeff. So I'm Sonia. I joined the Functions team actually 9 months ago. And I've been working on Java, Python, and some monitoring stuff recently. So I'm super excited to be joining the webcast. This is my first time joining it. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thrilled to have you. And we have a ton of people. I don't know if you're both watching the chat as it goes on, but I see a ton of folks who've joined. Anirudh, I'll let you go. Who are you? Why are you here? Who invited you? Who sent you this Teams meeting?
So Jeff said that he didn't find anybody else, so that's why he invited the engineering team. Usually it's just the PMs. But the engineering team also wants to have fun with all the PMs. So here I am. I'm Anirudh Garg. I'm an engineering manager on the Azure Functions team. Joined the team about 1.5 years back. I own many of the new languages, Python, Java, PowerShell, and I also own some of the Linux infrastructure, and also I'm working on getting functions on Kubernetes. So these are all the areas that I help out on.
It's a good intro.
And I would say
folks who join the webcast frequently will probably even recognize your name because you've crashed our chat a number of times to help answer some questions too. So now they know the face to the name of Anirudh.
Yep, exactly.
All right, perfect. And if you hear a little bit of background noise at the Holland home today, that's because I'm babysitting right now. So we'll see how that goes. So far, they are apparently having a blast in the other room doing something. So we'll see. This is the world we live in right now, folks. We're coming live. We're coming raw. We're coming live. So if this is the first time you've joined a webcast, welcome. We are remote today, obviously, as much of the world is. We're going to go through a few updates, a few announcements. We actually have two very exciting demos. And I see Angelo's already off to a great start because this is what I was going to mention. If you have any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat window. And throughout this, we also want to share updates and announcements as we go too. And yes, Wagner, we are all in this wonderful world of being remote, which is why too, just throw us on in the background. Stick us on the second monitor. We'll just entertain you for a little bit. Okay, so with that, I have a notepad here that I was going to track these questions in to make sure that I didn't lose track this month because I'm getting better every month. So let me make sure I get the one question from Angelo in here too. Okay, sweet. All right. We will show our deck and go into what's new. So first off, what's new? First thing that is new, Anirudh, starting us off, what is the new stuff with Kafka that folks should know about?
Yeah. So we have a Kafka trigger. We had a Kafka trigger in alpha for some time, but we could not use it in our managed services. For example, we couldn't use it to scale out. And so now we have a beta version just out, fresh out of the press, and now you can use the same trigger in the premium plan and actually scale out your instances based on the Kafka topic length and so on. So if you would remember, sometime back we had the RabbitMQ also available in a similar vein, and now we have support for Kafka as well. So now you can use Kafka as well as RabbitMQ in the premium plan and scale out your number of instances based on the topic length or the queue length.
Yep, perfect. So this is big. This makes it so Kafka, primarily we'd see folks using it in Kubernetes, as Anirudh said, and now it's much easier to use everywhere else too. And that's out now. Like that NuGet package is out. Folks could start doing that today, right?
Yep, they could. It's out. The beta version is out. Please try it. Give us feedback.
Yep, for sure. This is oh yeah, that's right. Serverless. I shouldn't have said serverless library. I should have said serverless framework. Yeah, serverless framework. I might even do a live edit here since I can, and we're so early in. So serverless framework support for Python. This is a very popular serverless framework library that a few months back we shipped support for doing JavaScript functions. So you could use the serverless framework, which works across like Lambda, Azure Functions. It now supports Python as well. This is specifically interesting because at the same time, and I don't have a link to it later in the show, but we actually just published a case study as well of how a few customers were able to use serverless to do a multi-cloud serverless deployment across Lambda and Azure Functions, and using serverless framework is the thing behind the scenes. So pretty cool experience there too. All right.
So I think they can do Node and Python now.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah, we are in Node as well.
Yep.
New regions. Sonia, you want to talk a little bit about this one, and I'll even show this new experience here?
Yeah, so we've been getting like questions about, when will functions be supported in a specific region. And so we wanted to make sure that we actually have it listed out somewhere. So now you actually can access it. We have a regions page, and it shows all our plans, like the basic 2 plans, consumption and premium, for both Windows and Linux. And you can see all the regions, right, from government regions and all the other regions in the world, and you can see what regions we are already having support in, and what are the other regions where, like, you see a small timer where it shows like when is GA expected. So that's really cool. So you don't have to, like, keep on waiting without really knowing when something is coming in your region. You can just go and check it out.
Yeah, and just to call out, just additional is that we had the regions, but now we have broken into different SKUs, right? Because different SKUs have different availability, and
Right.
so the different SKUs is now clearly broken out, so that people have the visibility. Just to add to what Sonia said.
Yep, totally agree. Always a big question of like, is premium here? Is Linux here?
Exactly.
And now you can easily see it for everything. Perfect. Okay, moving right along. Anurad or Sonia, I guess. What's new with PyTorch and Python, and maybe even a little bit of what even is PyTorch for folks who might not be familiar already?
Yeah, go ahead, Anirudh.
Yeah, so PyTorch is one of the more popular deep learning libraries used in machine learning, and along with TensorFlow, it is really one of the 2 premier deep learning libraries. I think so. What we are announcing, or what we have now, is support for PyTorch in Azure Functions. We have a very nice doc which you can go and check out with the sample app and so on. And so we've done the work to make sure that PyTorch, you can sort of use PyTorch in Azure Functions, even in the consumption plan, and actually serve out the PyTorch model using Azure Functions. So that's part of what the PyTorch release is.
Yeah, and some pretty cool functionality too that's paired along with this to help make one of the areas that we've seen a lot of interest around over the last few months, or even longer, is how can I use serverless to run machine learning workloads? And so some of these improvements really make that easy for data scientists too as well. Anurad, I know you've got a little show and tell here where you can show some of this in action. Do you want to actually just run through your PyTorch stuff right now?
Yeah, I can do that right now. I also have a small presentation. Maybe I can just do that.
Go for it.
Jeff and Tony, just confirm if you can see my screen.
We see the slides. Yep.
Yeah. So as Jeff was alluding to, I think we do feel that that the serverless a particular use case, machine learning model inference can be a great use case for that, because machine learning model inference basically is, at the end of the day, just calling a function, and serverless should be the ideal platform for that, because you're just calling a function here. However, we've got a lot of customer feedback that most current serverless platforms are not built for actually this use case, and there are various reasons for that. The machine learning libraries, like we just talked about, PyTorch and TensorFlow, can be very large. They have OS level dependencies. The machine learning models themselves can be very large. Some required OS libraries are not present, and so on. And as I said, the current serverless platforms, they have limitations because the deployment size, package size is smaller than what would be required. There's no way to separate out your model. And also there, as you know, the serverless paradigm or serverless services, they have maximum memory limits right now, right? And finally, they don't have GPU support. So these are all capabilities that customers want from the serverless platform, so that they can actually have a good model inference platform. And serverless is there, but because of these factors, it's not being used as much as it could be. So in Azure Functions, we really want to make it a first-class serverless platform for ML inference. So you've taken all this feedback from customers and actually added features to make sure that customers are successful and can use it for machine learning and data science. So the specific features that we have added are server-side and remote build, where you only need to specify the names of the modules in your application, and then deploy your application, and will automatically download, install, and package these large modules. Like the PyTorch module and the TensorFlow module are hundreds of gigabytes in size. So you don't need to include them in your package. We'll automatically download them on the server side for you, right? So this is the server side feature that we have. And then very recently, we also now allow you to mount an Azure file system automatically on your app, and this allows you to separate out your model from the app, and you can just load your module as if it's a file directly, and you don't need to include it in your deployment package. The deployment package size also can be up to 1.5 GB, where other platforms have much smaller size. And we continue to add many base OS libraries to enable XGBoost, OpenCV, LightGBM, and many other frameworks. Finally, as you know, we in Azure Functions, we have multiple SKUs, and we have the premium SKU. The premium SKU the consumption SKU has up to 1.5 GB of memory, but the premium SKU can have 14 GB of memory. And so for those cases where you actually need that much raw memory to load the model, we have SKUs for that. And also, if you need GPUs support, because as you know, the function deployment and the function programming model are decoupled. So you can take a function app and deploy it on Kubernetes. And there, if you really need GPU for your inferencing needs, you should be able to do that as well. So I have a very quick demo. And So what this demo is that, Jeff and Sonia, can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this demo is basically taking an image. As you can see, it's an image of a lamp here, and I'm running it through 4 different machine learning models, and which are all 4 different function apps with the same code, right? They're the same code, but they are using 4 different models. And so if I go ahead and submit, you can see that now these 4 different 4 function apps with the same code, but using 4 different models, are all able to say that it's a table lamp, but they say it with different levels of confidence, right? And if I just quickly go back and show you the app, so this app is actually calling 4 different function apps, all have the same code. And if you look at the code itself,
can you zoom in just a little bit too, Anirudh?
Okay, let me see. Is that better?
Maybe one. That's perfect right there. That's great.
Okay. Yeah. So going back, if you can look at the app itself, it is basically calling 4 different apps. The code is the same, and in the code itself, I'm not hard coding the name of the model or the directory where the model is. I'm just getting it from the app settings, right? If you look, the app itself is only 100 KB in size, right? And the other thing I wanted to show is that I'm only specifying the libraries that are needed. The actual libraries, the PyTorch library, is not included in the app itself. And just to complete, the models are all uploaded in Azure files. And as you can see, some of these models are several hundred megabytes in size. And at runtime, the app, when it is running in Azure, is able to read the model directly from Azure files without having it to be part of the deployment package. And so this enables a lot of the machine learning scenarios that I was talking about.
That's really cool. Yeah, that's awesome. And I think you highlighted a lot of really cool things there. I think that the aspect that the models are being loaded in that storage account is massive, because then you don't have to worry about, oh, and I'm in a bit of infinite. You might need to stop sharing on it so you don't see infinite Jeffs, though everyone wants to. But yeah, showing that, how you can work with the code. A few questions that came in too, and I'll let you both answer them as we went. Joel asked a question, does this mean that Azure Functions will be supported as an inference target for Azure Machine Learning deployments, kind of like how ACI and AKS is a deployment target today?
That's a great question. We already have Azure Machine Learning integration, but right now in the premium plan, not the consumption plan, but it is the inference target for the premium plan because the Azure Machine Learning needs a custom Conda environment. And so that custom Conda environment can only be used currently in the premium plan. So we do support it, and there is even a doc for it, and we can send a link on how to do that.
Great. And then go for it, Sonia.
I wanted to say one quick thing, that the fact that we can now actually mount an Azure file system on a consumption plan, and this is not just for premium, even for consumption, actually enables a lot of scenarios which require a fast file system. You can imagine a lot of scenarios where there are multiple functions which are all coordinating and they need a fast file system. So there are a lot of distributed applications that we think that we'll start working on, which will be enabled by this, by the fact that you have very fast, almost infinite storage available to your function apps.
Perfect. Great. And Sonia sent me the link, but I don't know if I click it. Oh, no, wait. It might. Hold on. You'll have to look at me for a second while I click it, and then I will go back and I'll paste this in because they'll be able to see my entire team's experience. And I don't want everyone to see all my other super top secret Teamsy things that I do. So I'll paste in a link to that doc, Sonia, that you sent. So thank you for doing that.
Cool.
Awesome. Very good. And people do comment that I seem to scale just as well as functions, which I appreciate. The last question from Joel, Onward on this, and Sonia, I don't know if we've given this thought. Is there a way you could automatically load in your trade models directly from AML's model registry? Because they have a registry that you can store your models in. Any integration on that front or thoughts?
That's a great question. We haven't looked at it, but if there is an API, and if there is and if it's using Azure Auth, then probably using MSI, we should be able to easily integrate it. But we'll have to try it out. Frankly, I've not tried it out. But I think in many of these cases, it is the auth model. And if the auth model is clean enough, it's just using Azure Auth. Then because we have MSI support, again, one more feature, right? Because we have MSI support out of the box, we should be able to load it up.
Great. Perfect. Awesome. So we'll jump back over. Thank you for the demo. We have another one coming too. So stay put. We'll go through the rest of what's new, and then we'll answer a few of the questions that have popped in. I've been copying them as we go, so feel free to keep those coming. All right. So moving right along. Oh, yeah. So this one you showed in your demo too. I guess I should have shown both of these. The ability to mount that file system onto those Linux SKUs, Linux consumption being really appealing here, a consumption SKU that lets you mount these file systems on for files that your app might need access to is pretty slick. Sonia, I'll let you cover this one. Gradle plugin and Azure Toolkit for IntelliJ. Is that just IDE idea? I always just see it. I never actually have said it before. Maybe I shouldn't have said it. But either way, I will cover what this line item means.
Yeah, so basically for Azure Functions, if you were a Java developer, the current way to do things was with Maven. And we heard a lot about Gradle plugin. A lot of people wanted to use Gradle to do Azure Functions. So now we have the support. We have the Gradle plugin, and you can actually use it. It's currently in public preview. We have the documentation out for it as well. So feel free to use it and let us know what you think. So that's the Gradle plugin part. The second part in that bullet was actually if you are a Java developer who really likes your IntelliJ and you want something which is sleek, similar to the Azure Functions plugin that we have for VS Code. So there is now the Azure Toolkit, which you can find, which is a plugin actually in IntelliJ. So you could go to IntelliJ and get that plugin and install it. And that will actually give you a very seamless experience without having to know the commands. You can just create your function app using the plugin. It creates a template for you and basically runs you through different things that you could do. So it helps you create the app, then you can run it locally, you can debug it, and then you can publish to Azure. You can also see all your Azure resources or Azure function apps in the IntelliJ plugin itself. So if you really love our VS Code Azure Functions plugin experience, which we've heard a lot from a lot of our customers, this one is like catered towards Java specifically and in IntelliJ. So the Azure Toolkit now makes it very, very easy to get started with functions for Java.
Perfect. Makes a ton of sense. Yeah, that's great. And obviously, I'm biased. My IDE of choice is VS Code and Visual Studio, but I've used IntelliJ quite a bit, especially when I'm writing Java. And so that's awesome. We have even first class integration there because we love all developers, regardless of if you use Emacs or Vim. And I will let you hash it out in the chat which one of those is the right answer. But I am adamant that tabs is the right answer, so don't even worry about that one. Okay. Honored. Wow, there's a lot here. I'm not getting to talk as much. I'll have to find a way to do it. PowerShell commandlets. This is an exciting one. Honored, I'll let you cover this one.
Are you on mute, Anirudh?
Sorry, I was on mute.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah. We had to let people know we are as good at remote meetings as everyone else, and that oh, you're on mute. But we haven't had any echoes, so. Yeah. Anyway, go for it.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you perfect.
Yeah. So we just announced a new version. For the longest time, we didn't have a PowerShell module to actually manage Azure Function apps. Folks might not know, but we've been releasing a version or alpha versions, and now we have the latest the next version of the PowerShell module to manage Azure Functions. Now this has more capabilities. For example, now you can deploy a container app with it, and there's a lot of cleanup we have done and lots of new features in that. And we are racing towards GA, and we hope that we can get it part of the. It's not part of the AZ module right now, but we are hoping that will be part of the AZ module in a month or so. But you can still grab it today from the PowerShell gallery and start to try it out.
I see. So if you want to use this, it's not yet incorporated with the out-of-the-box PowerShell Azure stuff. It will be in the future, but you can still start using it today just by grabbing it straight from PowerShell Gallery.
Yep.
That's cool. That's great. Yeah, I love that. More stuff in the toolkit for operations and management of all these millions of functions that are out there. Yep. Okay, so that's all of what's new. We'll just show this. Sonia actually put this together. I think it's great. We highlighted a bunch of new stuff. We have first class docs, thanks to our amazing doc team and our amazing PMs, for a bunch of this stuff. So deploying a pre-trained image to PyTorch. I think that's not the one I pasted in. I pasted even a fifth one, right? The one I pasted in was around Azure machine learning integration. Sonia?
Yes.
So here's 4 other ones. PyTorch, Python, file share, the mounting of Linux plans, the Gradle, and that new IntelliJ add-in stuff. All here are docs that if you're interested, you should go dig in and find out more. So with that, before we go into what's coming, let's answer a few questions that popped in as we go. I want to give some shout out to folks. I know the times and time zones aren't perfect for everyone to join this live. So there were a few folks who asked some questions on Twitter ahead of time. So I can take some time to flag some of those now so that they know that we care about them too. The first one, and I failed to get the person's name, so I forgot now who asked it, but it was any updates on iConfiguration and in enabling you to do custom iConfiguration and like your startup for a .NET function. The answer is yes. I think it's actually in the what's coming slide, so maybe I should have saved this question. We have the pull request open now. We should be closing it soon, and it will be rolling out in an upcoming functions release. I would imagine in the next month-ish that you will see the ability for you to manage configuration and inject configuration as part of your app startup so that you can do things like load app settings or set configuration values or whatever else. A lot of folks try this today and they run into issues because we also use iConfiguration to manage a lot of stuff on the host. So even yesterday, someone was like, hey, my host.json settings aren't being honored and my batch settings aren't being honored. And it ended up being because they'd been messing with iConfiguration and they'd screwed something up. So this exposing, it's the same way that we expose dependency injection now, will be a safe way for you to party on that without bumping into some of the stuff that we're using behind the scenes. So that's that one. Let's see if there's one more. Yeah, and Angelo had a question about dependency injection in V3, but I've seen the chat has been super helpful there. It should work. And it sounds like there might be some theories on maybe some mismatch in app settings that's causing the issues, but it should be. This is a good question from Mr. Hanseloffen. Great username. I hope it's your real last name because it's great. Any capacity issues in functions these days? Anurad, I'll let you chime in. Obviously, in the COVID-19 crisis, like Azure sent a few updates on some of the work that we've been doing to make sure that we're making sure that we have compute available. As far as I know, there shouldn't be any issues that are impacting folks on that one. I don't know, Anurad, if you have anything else. And yes, great. Mr. Hanseloffen's still on. Anurad, yeah, anything you'd flag there? I think
I think overall, as you can imagine, that Azure, as many of the clouds, we have seen a lot of increased usage across many different organizations, but in functions specifically, I think we have been okay with respect to capacity. And we haven't seen a lot of pressure on because we had that excess capacity already available. However, we have seen increased usage across a lot of our top users, but we haven't. But we're able to manage the capacity as of now, specifically for functions.
Yep.
Right.
And yeah, your first line of defense too, if you are bumping into any issues, like support tickets is a great way if anything comes up. But it definitely has been like a P1 for all of us to make sure that in this time with COVID-19, with the crisis, with everything else, that we're making sure we're making the changes we need to so that we've got what we need.
Only the last thing I would say is that also it's very region specific. There are more regions. There are some regions which are under because Azure has 50 regions. So there are some regions which are a little bit more capacity crunch. So one more easy way, especially if it's not a already deployed production app, is to if you're seeing some things, then try it out in different regions, and that'll definitely can help. So that's just one tip.
Great, perfect. Okay, so we have a few more questions, but I'm going to pause for now. This was just a little break in the middle because we also want to cover what's coming. So let me switch back over here to the deck, and this is where our second demo is going to pop in. So let's now tease what are some of the things that are coming in the next few weeks, in the next few months. First one, I'll go through this one quickly. Just there's the new portal preview. It will be becoming the default probably around the end of May-ish. So keep an eye on that one. We've had really great feedback. So thanks a ton, everyone, for testing it out, for sending feedback. It's been a fantastic preview. And so shout out to the community as always. This one I'll go over quickly. There's a GitHub issue for a while. I've even written a few blog posts on this topic, which is if you're using something like Event Hubs, and the way Event Hubs work is you have checkpoints. So you pull in a bunch of messages, and when the messages are done being processed, you checkpoint and you pull in the next group. And the way Functions works today is that we continue to progress the checkpoint, whether or not your code threw an exception in its processing, because we don't want to just be stuck at a checkpoint if there was a bad message forever. There's ways around it. I've blogged about it before, but it is sometimes people are like, look, I want to retry this thing a few times. What if it's transient? I don't want to lose any messages. And so there's a new feature. We've got a design doc out in GitHub. We got a bunch of good feedback from the community around enabling you to set up some settings to say, actually retry 10 times, wait 5 seconds between retrying, retry indefinitely. There's a risk there in that you could say retry indefinitely and you have a bad message and you're stuck in an infinite loop, and we're just paying you that sweet, sweet serverless compute. But it's your choice now, or it will be soon. So that one's coming as well, which will help a lot of folks. But use with caution, please. As much as I want you to use functions, I don't want you to be stuck in infinite serverless loops. Sonia, I'll let you cover this one, and then you can actually transition straight into showing some of this in action. Distributed tracing for Java apps.
Yes, absolutely. So for Java function apps, in your function app code itself, if you were to use third-party loggers, you weren't able to see the logs for those before. Now with a new agent that we have enabled on the function side, all that customers have to do is add 2 new app settings, and they will be able to see a lot of stuff, a lot more enriched monitoring experience. And that is something that I'm going to demo today. So let me share my screen.
And Sonia, people are a big fan of your shirt, by the way. I'll just mention. Everyone keeps asking. Whenever someone wears that ASCII art shirt, people always want to know where they can get one.
Yeah, I should have worn it too as well. Good idea.
So today, so this is a very simple HTTP trigger Java function app. And basically, I'm just having like 2 log statements here. I've deployed this app to 2 different apps here. So one is the one with the app settings. So let me just quickly show you what those app settings are. Actually, this is the application insights view, but I could actually go to the app and show you the settings as well. So this is my function app. If I go to configuration, the 2 app settings that I've enabled here are application insights agent extension version, which has to be ~2, and XTD Microsoft App Insights Java, which has to be 1. So with that app settings enabled or added, what I am now going to show you is the experience that you see with AppMap. So the same piece of code again is deployed to this app and this app. However, this app doesn't have those settings, right? So in terms of the app map view, see the difference here. Like you can see actually the 7 calls that have been made to and you can see the details, you can filter by the node. Whereas in the old way of doing things where we didn't have that as much, so you can't really see outgoing dependencies. So you can just see that there are 3 instances and 8 calls were made, but you can't see where they were or what they were made to. So that's one big thing with the app map view, especially which will be helpful when you have a bunch of dependencies that you're calling out to in your function app code. The second thing is the live metric stream. So if I go to the live metric stream for both these apps, and I'm just going to invoke them. I'm just calling the function app, the function endpoint, sorry. So here you can see the one which has the app settings. You can see the outgoing requests flowing through, which is not the case here. So you can't see the outgoing requests where you don't have the app settings, but the distributed tracing enables showing these outgoing requests. In addition, if you go down to the server, right? Let me see. Let me invoke the 2 apps once again so we can see it in action. Yep. So if you go to the server and you click on, like you see a bunch of sample telemetry flowing in, which basically has a lot of the log data, which here, let me see. Oh, all right. So, I mean, this is the other thing where in the server, you have a lot more data in the distributed tracing view. You can drill down like to each of that data, whereas in, without the app settings, you don't get that level of granularity with your data. And the third thing is in the performance view. Let me go to the performance view. So here, again, you can see so this is the same. So you see this in both places, but then you have dependencies over here. So this is it's the same app, but you don't really see a dependency here. But when you have enabled those application settings, you do see those dependencies. So I had an HTTP and then a SQL dependency in the function app code. So you get a much richer monitoring experience, basically, and especially these three views in application insights is the app map view where you actually see what is being called, the live metrics view where you see the outgoing requests coming in, flowing through, which you wouldn't see otherwise, and then the performance view, where you actually in the dependencies can see what are the dependencies that your app has. So all these three are new things that are enabled because you added those two app settings. So this is currently in private preview. And it does have a little bit of cold start impact, but it would be great like if you guys want to try it out and give us feedback. We are currently working on the documentation for this, and it should be out sometime next week. The other thing I just want to quickly mention is the logging libraries that you could use is the usual Java util logging, log4j, sl4j, and logback. And these are all the dependencies that with distributed tracing, we are able to show if you have dependencies on any of these from your function app. That's all about distributed tracing. And this is something, again, like I mentioned, it's in private preview right now. Let us know what your feedback on it, and we'll add it. Like the next goal kind of is to see how we can reduce the cold start and still have this really cool features in functions.
Perfect. That's great. Thank you. Yeah. And this is all of that is specific to Java as well. We do some of the dependency tracking for .NET today, but even then the extensibility options where you can use all those custom loggers is pretty slick. So huge improvement there. We were just on a call right before this webcast actually, and hearing some of the feedback from some of our large Java customers who are loving this functionality in the private preview. So awesome job, Sonia. Thank you for showing that. Okay, sweet. So now that we've covered distributed tracing, we still have more announcements, and then we'll do some community highlights because we've got a few of those too. Java 11. We've announced this one before. This is still coming in the upcoming months. The ability to write apps targeting towards Java 11. See how much we love IntelliJ, distributed tracing, Java 11. Man, what a great time to be a Java dev. Durable functions for Python and PowerShell, also something we've talked about in the past. That should be rolling out in the next few weeks. I believe there's some alpha bits and preview bits you can dig into as well. I already talked about the eye configuration improvements for .NET. I mentioned that in one of the questions. This is something else we've covered before that is still coming in an upcoming deployment. The ability to say, hey, like when Sonia was showing that live view and you saw all those servers behind the scenes, how many instances were being spun up of that function's runtime. Sometimes you want to limit that. You're like, look, I am calling this SQL database like what Sonia showed, and I can't handle it if 50 apps are all hammering that SQL database. So the ability for you to be like, actually stop at 30 and we'll stop scaling at that point so you can control some downstream throttling. Sonia, I'll let you cover this one too. Python portal log streaming. What's this? What's new? What is not there today?
Yeah, sure. I think can we go to the next slide? Oh, I can talk and then we can go.
Oh yeah,
you-
actually, yeah. We can have
Yeah,
this GIF
I can
run.
talk through this. Yeah. So basically, we did not have the log streaming capability on the portal for Python or for Linux. And we heard from a lot of our customers and students, especially, that this is a really sleek functionality. When they write their function app code, they do want to see the logs, live logs in the portal. So we have now. This is the work has been done, but it's coming. It hasn't been released yet. It will be coming up soon, likely in the next month or so. But basically, whatever logging statements you write in your code, for example, hello Dan is what is written here. You will be able to see it in the portal right then and there. So that's like, here's a sneak peek for that functionality.
That's perfect. It's awesome. And if you noticed in the text there too, it's connecting to that App Insights experience that Sonia showed a second ago. It's just embedded in native into that portal experience, which is really slick. I love that. Okay. We still have more what's coming. Man, we're working on too much stuff. We've talked about these before too. OpenID Connect, the ability for you to integrate with any identity provider. It's in private preview. If you're interested, hit us up on Twitter. We can get you involved in that private preview. If you want to use app service and function authentication with a non provider that we support today, which is like Azure Active Directory, Twitter, GitHub. And similar, actually in the same vein, the ability for you to have app service authentication and what we call easy auth, even if you're using Linux consumption, is coming as well. I don't know, Anirudh or Sonia, if you have any updates on this one in terms of what people should expect or when.
Yeah, we're hoping that this will be also out in a 2 or 3 weeks. And this, as Jeff pointed out, this really allows folks, if they're using, especially we've got a lot of asks from people who want to use AD, Active Directory auth, in their Python apps. And they're not able to do that right now because the Linux consumption SKU does not support easy auth. But once this happens, then we can enable that scenario as well.
Perfect. Great. And I saw, Alejandro, you asked a question about the iConfiguration improvements that are coming. I'll just recap briefly, too. It's mostly when you create that startup method. Today, we let you pass in the services, so you can start to add services through dependency injection. Will also allow you to pass in an iConfiguration that you can start reading from or modifying the iConfiguration that will be rolling out soon, so that folks who want to do both configuration and services have both patterns available to them. Okay, let me look at we have community highlights, and there's a few more questions I picked up. So maybe we'll do community highlights because I want to fit those in. But this is the call. We'll do one last Q&A rush after these community highlights. So if you have questions that we have not answered, well, I have a bunch. So I think I've caught most of the questions this webcast. I've been pretty good. But who knows? Maybe I didn't. But if you have other questions, shoot them into the chat right now while we go over community highlights. There's a bunch here, which is really great. So as always, we have a link here with, if you want to look at any of these posts, I have a link to all of them at aka.ms/function/links. These were the top 7 that I pulled this week as I was looking through. It's always the favorite part of my webcast preparation, is looking at all these posts that people are coming on. So Fabian Williams recently just posted a fantastic, and I think Fabian's actually on the webcast, or else I thought I saw him chatting at the beginning, a really great blog post about how they're using serverless tech, Power BI, to power a COVID-19 human capital dashboard. So folks can submit a survey and say how they're doing, how they're feeling, the anxiety that they're experiencing, and it's processing the data and rendering it on a Power BI dashboard, which is pretty slick. So I'd encourage you to check that out. Jonathan George, there's a whole series on this one. I might even switch over to my other screen and show you this. Jonathan George has a whole series here. I think it's 4 or 5 parts from Engine that talks about testing in Azure Functions. And the thing that's pretty cool here is that they have some tooling. This is something that's asked from time to time, but they have some tooling, and they're using some of this extensions to actually run the Azure Functions runtime and trigger the code as part of the tests. And so it's not just running unit tests, it's actually running tests against the functions runtime directly, which is pretty cool to see. So if that's interesting to you, there's some stuff about using GitHub Actions to do some of this too. A pretty cool series there as well from Jonathan George in Engine that's worth highlighting. Let's see here what else we have. We have Lewis has got this one on. Oh, and a question came in around this too. Last month, we announced custom runtimes, which means that you can write code in any language, and the function host will invoke it over HTTP, and you can run anything. So I don't know, Anand or Sonia, if you'd ever heard of this. Have you ever heard of Racket, like the language Racket?
I haven't.
Yeah. So apparently there's a language called Racket, and you can use it with Azure Functions now. So this is a great blog post about how in just a few steps, in a few paragraphs, you got a Racket app. And I'm assuming Racket's like some abstract, kind of like a Kotlin or whatever is like a Java thing.
No, it looks like a dialect of Lisp.
Oh, okay. Wow. Sure. And it works in functions. Yeah, go figure.
Functional programming. Right?
So that would be the same answer too. I think someone earlier, one of the questions I grabbed is how do you use Azure Functions with something like Rust? I think I would encourage that same approach. This is another very cool blog post from John. He has a website, and as part of the website, it needs to send emails, and he didn't want to do that in the website process. And so he spun up an app that drops a queue message, and an Azure function picks up the queue message, and it sends the email. But rather than just sending an email, it actually uses Razor templates in .NET, and he's rendering the HTML for the email as part of the function. So I've seen people do this in JavaScript before with like handlebars.js, but this was a cool way to use Blazor or Razor directly in the function to render some of those templates too, which I liked. This is another cool. The thing the highlight from this one is some innovative solutions here. Like this is another one that I hadn't seen before. So, Michael, apologies if I'm pronouncing your name wrong, has a great post on Medium. The scenario is he's writing APIs in C# that he's publishing as functions, but there's developers who are writing the front end that need to call those APIs, and they're using TypeScript. And so he's written a tool where I believe, if I'm remembering this right, it's during like the CI/CD process, it will actually use functions to go and create typings files and publish them, so that if you're a front-end dev, you're just like, myapi.foo, and it's got strongly typed interface right for you from the get-go, based off of your C# Azure function. So it's kind of a CI/CD extension of how he's doing that. Using Swagger in there too, it's pretty slick. It was actually a really cool scenario. Okay, two more, all very good. Nick, let me look at this one. Oh yeah, this was just a great one. The thing I'll call out with Nick's post, it was more just like almost like just a standard dev blog, which is like, hey, I'm going to try using Azure Functions with VS Code. I've never done it before, and let me write my learnings as I go. So there's not necessarily anything too crazy in there, but I appreciate that too. And he does a really good job documenting, here's the parts he got stuck on, here's the stuff that didn't work, he hit a few issues. And as I was reading through the blog post, he was successful at the end, but I was just taking notes where it's like, yeah, why do we tell people to install the core tools via NPM when they're a .NET developer, when we have things like an MSI installer or Chocolatey or whatever else, but things that he called out in his blog post too. So just a shout out to the community. I love that type of content too. Even if you don't have some crazy idea like these ones above, even just being like, I tried out functions, here was my experience, here's what I built, here's what made sense, here's what didn't, eat that stuff up. And the last one, Frank. Frank is one of our wonderful cloud advocates. If you haven't seen one of Frank's videos, you really should. He's one of a kind. In a good way. Maybe I'll just click it because it's just fun to see his style of video. Like Frank, look at this. You just watch this and you're like, I want to hang out with Frank. So Frank has posted a YouTube video about using functions to create a URL shortener so that as you're sharing links or whatnot, that you could shorten those URLs. So give Frank some love. Frank's awesome and appreciate it, Frank. Okay, those are the highlights I grabbed. As always, a huge shout out to the community. There's members here who I've even seen in chat who I saw doing some content that weren't even listed in this list. But we really do love this a ton. So any other thoughts on community before we wrap it up with a few questions, Sonia or Anirudh?
No, it's great. Great to see the active engagement from the community.
For sure.
Yeah, I mean, I have been just a personal thing. I've been in teams before where I've worked on very infrastructure oriented, but it's great to work on a team which is so developer oriented, and we just see there's so many more people using functions, and just great to see all the community build these apps and how they contribute. It's been one of the highlights and one of the reasons why I joined this team. So it's great.
That's perfect. Great. Thanks, Anurad. Yeah, it's very true. Like, honestly, echo that completely. Okay. So let's do a few more questions to wrap it up. And I see a few that have been pasted in, and some folks who enjoy I rearranged my office since the last webcast. And so I've got Baby Yoda still hanging out here over there. But yes, a Seahawks swag in Sydney, because it's probably my favorite city in the world, actually, to travel to. So shout out to anyone in Sydney. I haven't been to New Zealand yet, Wagner, so I don't have a New Zealand one yet, but it's only because I haven't had the chance to ever travel there. The only other one I'll mention, actually, before we go into questions, I guess I do have one more slide. Obviously, we don't have any traditional events, but there are 2 remote events that is worth plugging. The first is Build, which will happen next month. We'll probably have our webcast somewhere around this time. It'll be a different build than ever before because it's fully remote. It's a really interesting experience that we've been involved in and preparing for, but they're going to have incredible content. They're going to have some awesome presentations. Anyone can join completely free, I believe. And so I would encourage you to check that out. The other one, too, this is a conference we usually attend and care about as a team, also going remote. It's Integrate 2020. June 1st through 3rd. This will be focused on integration scenarios, some incredible MVPs, product group, really great community there. I'm going to be participating, which I'm excited about. I actually didn't think I was going to be able to go to Integrate this year because I've got a baby who's due in just a few weeks. But now that it's remote, I can do it. I just, like I'm doing at the webcast, I just lock the baby in the other room and then I present. Yeah, I think that. And whatever happened with PyCon, by the way? Is that remote too?
PyCon
Are we doing anything there?
Yes, it's live. Yeah, it's happening live. So we are currently preparing some presentations and demos for it.
Great.
Some of the cool new features that Anirudh just demoed.
Yes, very true. Very much so. So if anyone here was going to attend that, you got a little bit of a sneak peek.
Yeah. I just wanted to call out some of the great collaboration that we've been having with Java too.
Yeah.
So, for example, the things that we demoed, the App Insight stuff, and Gradle, IntelliJ, the Azure Toolkit, it has been a result of collaboration, and our partner teams and have been really very, very helpful doing that. They've been the driving forces behind it. So functions, like Anirudh also mentioned, everybody wants to use it, and it's great to be part of this team. And then it's also great to see all this collaboration happening across, application insights and monitoring and tools, and all of them coming together to actually build a complete story for functions and helping our developers, our customers, have a more seamless experience.
Yes, perfect. Thank you. Totally, absolutely agree. 100%. So thank you for giving that shout out as well. Okay, so let's answer a few questions, and I'll paste. Oh shoot, I was going to paste the link. I won't paste the link to Microsoft Build because just Google or Bing Microsoft Build, and it will pop up. But I will paste the link for Integrate Remote because that might be one that folks might not know about as well. If you're interested in attending that one too. Oh, great. And thank you, Mark. Mark's actually been running fantastic virtual events. I think he's an expert on OBS or something as well. It sounds like Serverless Days Amsterdam, which we were going to be traveling out to, is virtual as well on the 8th of May. That's one of the cool things. I know it's strange to say, but with everyone going remote, like something like Serverless Days Amsterdam that I wasn't going to be able to attend before, now I can attend. And Katie from our team is speaking at that conference. So thanks, Mark, for plugging that. I'm glad you flagged that. Okay, great. So a few questions. Anirudh, I'll throw this one at you. I don't know if you have a specific answer. Francesco asked, do functions on Linux have any limits compared to those on Windows?
If I just think about it on the top of my head, uh, the one limit that we have out of the box for Linux consumption is the number of instances that we scale out. Right now, by default, it is 50 instances, and I know in Windows consumption we support up to 200 instances. So that's one scale limit that we have. But we are planning to keep increasing that, and our goal is to make it 200 and very soon. But right now it is up to 50. So that's one scale limit that I know of. Other than that, we try very hard to make sure that that the experience and the limits are similar. Uh, and so other than that, I can't think off the top of my head if there's anything else.
Yep, and I think all the other like gaps like easy auth we even covered and things that are coming. So in the coming weeks, it actually should be pretty consistent across the two. That's something we really care about is doing that. Okay.
And I think we also got to parity with Linux Premium with all the VNet features that we talked about last time.
Correct. Yep. At this point, Linux Windows and Linux Premium should be 1-to-1, which is another good call out. Okay, so a few questions here from Alejandro. Let me make sure I grab all these. Any plans for enabling I see. Registering middleware for the HTTP trigger. This is a common ask, specifically around .NET. ASP.NET has this concept of middleware. They would be like, hey, I want to do this authentication code or this validation code or whatever else between when I get the request and when it invokes the function. Nothing on the plans right now that will be coming immediately. It's something I think our team's done investigation in the past, Fabio specifically. If you've joined a few webcasts and you know who Fabio is, we feel like we have a pretty good wrap around how we could do this. It's not quite there yet. There's a few considerations we have. So keep an eye on this one. It's good to make noise. If there's a user voice item as well, I'd encourage folks to upvote it. It's something we've done enough investigation that I'm confident we could do it. It's just a question of when. So nothing to share today, but is something we keep our eye on. Pretty frequently this comes up. And kind of a follow-up to that would be like other functionalities to do more ASP.NET parity around dependency injection. So this came up before too, like there's this accessor pattern for dependency injection, a few other aspects. I think for now, the two that we're focusing on is the constructor-based injection and then the attribute-based injection where you could do like inject for a specific method in a class. All the other patterns we don't have any plans on either right now. I think the last time I talked to Fabio about this, and I'm not the expert, it was a little bit more of those are the preferred dependency injection patterns in general. So those are the ones that we're doubling down on. Though there is work longer term that we are moving towards to provide even more flexibility about the stuff you can do in your .NET code. So that's a ways out. You'll have to join a few webcasts before we get more into details of what I'm alluding to there, teasing people in the 57th minute of the webcast of a 6-month out feature. Okay. Rust, we talked about where you can get the t-shirt. Once I get back into our building, I will at least have a storage room full of them. But who's to say when that is? And I already said in the last webcast, I'm not shipping them. And so whenever we have, and Microsoft canceled all their conferences, they made them all virtual through June of 2021. We'll have to figure out the t-shirt thing together. We will sort it out. We'll have to be good citizens here in this virtual world, and we'll be creative. Maybe we'll just get Honored to send them all since I don't want to.
I'm okay. I can do it. No problem.
They know how to find you on Twitter, Honored. Don't volunteer.
Yeah, I can be useful as long as they become my follower, right?
Okay. Okay, great. Last question. I think I'm looking at chat, and this should wrap us up right at the hour mark. Okay. Any update on outstanding V3 bugs, like not getting the automatic input JSON we had in V2 for HTTP triggers anymore? I don't know specifically on this bug that is being asked about. In general, the best place that we do triage these, we just had a triage a few days ago, is the GitHub issues. So I imagine, I think it was Jonathan who asked this question. Maybe I'm wrong. I might have just pasted it in the wrong spot. If there's a GitHub issue, feel free to hit me up on Twitter and I'll do a double check on it. Obviously there's constantly some bug or issue that we're working on. I'm not going to claim there are no bugs. This one specifically I'm not aware of, but if there's a GitHub issue, hopefully folks have engaged. Hopefully it's been triaged, and then we're going through and bubbling those up. So just let me know if there's anything we're not focusing on. Great. That's all the questions. A lot of folks saying thanks. Great job. I see a few folks starting to drop off now. So I think that's a signal for us to wrap it up. It is interesting. We do these so long now when we ramble a bit. Someone was asking on Twitter, they're like, you guys should just publish these as audio to a podcast after the fact, and people can just put them on, because the webcasts have evolved into quite an hour-long ordeal, Anirudh and Sonia and community. So thank you all for joining. Great chatting with you. Sonia, Anirudh, thank you for joining. I'm sure we'll have you on again soon. And thanks for representing the right swag here, Sonia, as well. Okay, any last thoughts from either of you?
No, thank you. This was great fun. Thanks for having me. And looking forward to working with all of you. And thanks. It is you guys and you folks who make us do and work hard and do what we do. So thank you.
Yeah, I would just like to add there, like we spoke about how exciting it is to work on Azure Functions, but it's also the people that we work with, the team, be it the dev team, PM team, stakeholders, docs, community, all the visibility with the conferences, and we actually get to talk to a lot of customers. It's like really exciting space to be in right now. So thank you for all of that.
But except Jeff.
Yeah, that's right. It's the community is great enough. It makes up for the burden of having to work with me on a day-to-day basis. That's how incredible you all are. So thanks a ton, everyone. Thanks for saying thanks. And we'll catch up soon virtually. We'll see you again next month. So thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.